The name Nintendo is known worldwide and has created insanely popular franchises like Super Mario Bros. And The Legend of Zelda, but that wasn't always the case. Most people don't know that Nintendo has been around for more than 100 years, a long time before video games were made. However, before we begin our video, we would greatly appreciate it if you would subscribe to Timeless Business and also press the bell icon. Let's get started. Early beginnings of Nintendo. We all know that Nintendo is one of the companies that started the gaming era. However, not as many people know that the company was started over 130 years ago to make handmade playing cards called Hanafuda, even though gambling was illegal at the time. Still interested? Let's discuss some of their long and exciting history in this video and look at the most important events in the history of this true gaming icon, from its humble beginnings to the present day. First of all, here are a few quick facts to keep in mind while watching the video. Fusajiro Yamauchi started the Nintendo company in the beautiful city of Kyoto in 1889. Its headquarters are still in Kyoto, where it was first called Nintendo GUNPEI, which means playing cards. Yes, the gaming giant we all know and love today began as a simple playing card company more than 100 years ago. Even though there was a ban on gambling at the time and the Japanese government banned all playing cards with numbers because of it, handmade Hanafuda cards were still allowed because they didn't have any numbers on them and didn't have anything to do with gambling. In fact, these cards were so popular that the company had to hire more people to keep up with the demand. Over the years, Nintendo started making more and more types of cards. Eventually, they teamed up with what is now Japan Tobacco to sell their cards in cigarette shops all over Japan. The early years. Fusajiro Yamauchi, whom we've already talked about, saw a market for these cards after all the others were banned. He came up with a plan to bring back the ancient game, which he had played in Japan since the Edo period 1603 to 1886, by drawing pictures by hand on cards made of mulberry tree bark. So, the good people at Retro Junk say that on September 23, 1889, he opened a new business called Nintendo GUNPEI. This turned out to be a great idea, as Nintendo's Hanafuda cards became more popular across the country to the point where they were even used for illegal gambling. When there's gambling, the Yakuza is usually not too far away, so even the notorious Japanese mafia used Nintendo's playing cards back in the day. According to the BBC, members of the Yakuza even got tattoos that looked like the pictures on Nintendo cards. As a side note, if you've ever wondered why Mario Bros. Have random flower power and let you shoot fireballs, it's because of these flower cards. This is the only thing that Nintendo has done from the beginning that they still do today. Fusajiro's playing cards were very popular in Kyoto, and he soon needed more time to paint them by hand. When a business owner has this problem, which is a good one, he hires more people to help him. Fusajiro did the same thing. He hired people to help him and showed them how to paint cards as he did. The Nintendo company grew with more playing cards to sell until Fusajiro opened a new store in Osaka. Fusajiro's company grew and grew for 40 years. They made games besides Hanafuda and eventually became Japan's largest playing card company. Fusajiro quit his job as president when he turned 70 and his adopted son-in-law took over. Fusajiro, on the other hand, had yet to see what would happen to his business. HIROSHI's contributions to Nintendo. In the same city of Kyoto, a boy named HIROSHI was born in 1927. When he was young, his parents couldn't care for him, so he moved in with his grandparents. His grandfather ran Nintendo as its CEO. HIROSHI started school when he was 12 and wanted to go to college. When World War II broke out, he had to put college on hold and instead worked in a factory making weapons for the war. When the war was over, he went to college to study law. At the same time, he got married. In 1949, HIROSHI's grandfather, the president of Nintendo, died. Since HIROSHI was next in line, he became the president of Nintendo. No one thought HIROSHI, who was only 22, would be able to run the company, but he proved everyone wrong by being very firm and taking charge of the company, and for the next 53 years, he would be in charge of Nintendo and help it grow. HIROSHI wanted to sell Nintendo playing cards in the United States when he became the company's new president. In the US, he made a deal with Disney so that Nintendo could use Disney characters on their cards. As a result, Nintendo was able to sell 600,000 packs in just 1 year. Hiroshi started looking for new ways for Nintendo to make money when he saw how much money was coming in. They tried many different things, like running a taxi service, running a restaurant, and making toys. Even though most of the ideas didn't work, making toys seemed their best bet. GUNPEI and Nintendo's light gun. Hiroshi was in the factory one day and saw one of the engineers playing with a device he had made that could reach out and grab things like a hand. Gunpei Ayaki was the engineer's name, and his job was fixing machines in the factory, but Hiroshi liked what he made so much that he turned it into a toy. They called it the Ultra Arm, and sold more than 1 million of them. Hiroshi asked Gunpei to help design more toys instead of working in the factory because of the success of the Ultra Arm. Gunpei made more toys for Nintendo, like the first solar-powered light gun, known as the Nintendo Beam Gun. The Odyssey was made by the American company Magnavox in 1972. It was one of the first home video game consoles. The Odyssey was made with Nintendo light guns. Not long after the Odyssey came out, Nintendo started using the light guns to make its arcade games. The laser clay shooting system was the name of their most popular game room. Shigeru Yamauchi and Donkey Kong. In 1977, a young artist named Shigeru Yamauchi was hired by Nintendo. Shigeru was born in Shinobi, Japan. When he was young, he loved exploring the forests, lakes, and secret caves around his home. He liked to draw and had a lot of ideas. He went to college after that to study art. At Nintendo, Shigeru did all of the art for an arcade game called Sheriff, and worked on other new games with Gunpei Ayaki, who made the Ultra Arm. A carpenter, his girlfriend, and a gorilla were all part of one of their big ideas. The gorilla threw barrels at the carpenter, who went up ramps and jumped over them until he reached the girl at the top. When Shigeru finally chose a name for Jumpman, he gave him the name Mario, which was the name of the man who owned the building where they lived. They gave their game the name Donkey Kong, which became one of the most well-known video games ever. The next big thing that Nintendo and Gunpei Ayaki made was a handheld game called the Game & Watch. It had a simple game and a clock. The Game & Watch was a big hit, making Nintendo more money to make cool gadgets. The Famicom or Family Computer was their next big thing. It was their first game console. It sold more than 500,000 copies, but many had problems and had to be removed from the stores. This cost Nintendo a lot of money, but they fixed the system in 1985 and called it the Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES. Nintendo was known for making good games that had to be approved by Nintendo before they could be sold. Ultimately, the NES was a huge hit in the United States. The Mario Brothers. Shigeru Yamauchi, an artist with a lot of ideas, also made the game Super Mario Bros., which features Mario from Donkey Kong and his brother Luigi. They made Mario a plumber instead of a carpenter and gave him superpowers. He could fall from any height, and with his hat and thick mustache, he made his way through a wild world full of strange monsters and sewage pipes. Legend of Zelda. Shigeru thought about his childhood when he was making his next video game. When he was young, he liked to explore the world around his home in Shinobi. He remembered finding a dark cave and going into it. He also remembered exploring the hills and lakes. He decided that his next big game would try to bring back the feeling of awe he had as a child. In The Legend of Zelda, an adventurous elf named Link looks for Princess Zelda by exploring an open video game world. The Legend of Zelda was also a big hit, and Shigeru had been in charge of making many sequels to it. Enter the Game Boy. The next popular device from Nintendo was the Game Boy, which was made by Gunpei Ayaki. It was a handheld device with games like Tetris, Super Mario Land, and Pokemon that were known for being good. In the end, 118 million Game Boys were sold. SNES and the Wii. The Super Nintendo, or SNES, was the next version of the Nintendo. It has better graphics and a lot of new games. At this time, the Sega Genesis, which had games like Sonic the Hedgehogs that were very popular, started to compete with Nintendo. Sony's PlayStation and later Microsoft's Xbox also competed with Nintendo, which later released the Nintendo 64 with 3D graphics, the Game Boy Color, the GameCube, and then the Nintendo DS and Wii. The Wii sold 10 million units, making it the best-selling game console of all time. Hit games like Wii Sports, Super Mario Galaxy, and The Legend of Zelda: Skyward Sword helped make it so. The Wii U came out after that, and the Nintendo Switch, which is its current console, came out last. Even as more and more game systems came out, Nintendo found ways to change and make its game system stand out. With the Wii, Nintendo came up with the nunchucks, which are handheld pointing devices. Nintendo made the Switch, a console that can be played at home or on the go. Nintendo also kept making game series like Zelda, Mario Kart, Metroid, Star Fox, and Pokemon, which were very creative, colourful, and suitable for the whole family. Through the decades. From 1889 to 1977, Nintendo grew and changed. Fusajiro Yamauchi started the company to make Hanafuda cards and card games with unique designs. The company did well with tabletop card games for almost 90 years. Success led them to start their business, to meet manufacturers' needs and try out other business ideas. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, the company started to focus a lot on video games. It started with the creation of arcade games. Between 1983 and 1989, the company made games for the Famicom and NES. Every choice had to do with making and selling Famicom game consoles and game cartridges. In 1990, the Super Famicom, also called the Super NES, became the most popular home console. During this time, video games and home consoles for everyone got better. It went from being a toy for kids to being a real system. The era of the Nintendo 64 began in 1996. The graphics were now in 3D, and the memory made it possible for the software to make experiences that were longer and more memorable. 007, GoldenEye, Spyro, Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, and Majora's Mask were some of the most popular games of the time. Between 2001 and 2005, as consoles started to use new types of memory, Nintendo did the same. The GameCube came out with a more powerful console than the N64 and used discs instead of cartridges. In 2006, the Wii era began. This was one of the least successful times for the company, but not because the product needed to be better. They didn't have a good plan for making and distributing the product that was in such high demand. Even so, the Wii introduced motion controls in a way that was good for the whole family. Between 2012 and 2016, the company fixed problems with how it got its products to stores. The Wii U changed how the Wii worked by giving it more power, a screen-controlled controller, and better tracking of your movements. In 2017, Nintendo's latest version of the Wii, which could be docked for home entertainment or playing on the go with a built-in screen, was a big step forward in terms of design. The Switch has been updated once and now has a bigger OLED screen. In the end, Nintendo was successful because its president, HIROSHI Yamauchi, was smart about business, and because designers like Shigeru Miyamoto and GUNPEI were creative. That's it for today. We hope you found our video interesting. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up and share it with others. Also, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to Timeless Business. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new uploads. In the end, thanks for watching and see you next time.